a podcast syndicate production. Each of us runs a different pace in life.
As a millennial or someone coming of age into adulthood, it's just a lot of things to process, and a lot of things that you want can't happen now because a lot of things are
in love, friendships, and our own self-worth. As we embark on these journeys, we hold the hope to learn a little more each day.
Why can't I have whatever they have? And oftentimes I find myself comparing my progress, comparing what I have with other people, even like in the slyest way. It seems like it's
as we survive and strive to be stronger.
You are really sure and aware of your being as a person and your truth, your core, your everything. Anything that you put out in the table won't be used against you.
So I'd like to welcome you all to love, growth, and freedom.
The different kinds of love that we could see in this world, and on the idea of how love is crazy and how love has different meanings for all of us.
A podcast that believes in love, inspires growth, and advocates freedom. Let me be your friend, your guide, as we all ride the crazy adventure called life. Powered by Guerilla Podcast Syndicate.
Hey guys, welcome back to Love, Growth, and Freedom, everybody. Thank you for dropping by again on this podcast. And today I have with me Mr. Alec Cuenca of Smalltalk Podcasts. Yes. Hi, Sir Alec. Oh, sir talaga. Hi, Alec. Oh, yeah,
Sir. Hey, good morning or good evening to everyone who is listening to the podcast. And I'm really happy to see you again, Adrian.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this collaboration for a while now, so it's really happy to be here. I'm really happy to be here.
I am actually really starstruck, to be honest, right now, because when I started podcasting, Sir Alec was also one of those, and I saw his podcast. I actually looked into his podcast when I also decided to start mine. So it was so cool. Now I saw you start in 2018. I think you had episodes in 2018. I was like, oh my gosh, he's been doing it for a year. And listening to him was like, oh, he sounds like a radio jock. He sounds so like the voice was very soothing. So it was awesome, and the topics were amazing. So I'm gonna send you some love over there. But today I invited him to our finale episode of our season 4 of this podcast because, you know, he's been an inspiration in our podcast. In Love, Growth, and Freedom, he's been an inspiration to doing the same value, the same journey, I guess. We talked about this last time we did our live together, and it was really awesome because we had most of the things at the same, like we had a lot of things in common. And then I was like, okay, maybe our podcast really just speaks about how we just go through life. And talking to him earlier and how he experiences all of those things too, and how he processes it and does it in the podcast. That's all the same thing that I've been doing ever since I started. So it's really, really awesome to have him here today. And our topic today, Sir Alec, is gonna be Sir Alec. Sir Alec, our topic is why is it important to celebrate our wins? So, yeah, but let's start with that. Sir Alec, why do you think celebrating our wins is important? Like, what is it with our little wins and triumphs that we have to look out for too?
Well, the funny thing is, I really didn't give a damn about my small wins before. You know, growing up, they didn't even teach us how to celebrate small wins or how to look for small wins. So I only learned this concept of celebrating small wins. I think it became last year, you know, starting with the podcast. And the podcast, because for the people who didn't know, I started literally from scratch. I didn't have, I'm not famous or anything. I'm not an expert at anything. I'm not really famous for, I didn't really have a viral video to back me up, you know. And I started the podcast, and it grew very, very slowly in the beginning. And that's the moment that I felt like I needed to celebrate small wins, because the small wins isn't necessarily small when it comes to the value that I'm giving, especially with the podcast. You know, compared to the other social media platforms, when I post, I look at the numbers, I look at the likes, the comments, the views, and all that stuff. But when it came to podcasting, every listener that I got in the beginning, especially if I known when I got like 5 listeners, there were 3 people who messaged me saying that they liked it, and that for me showed that podcasting is a lot more different than other platforms because it's not about the reach, it's not about the numbers, it's not about how wide you go, it's about how deep you build your relationship with your listeners. And so that's the moment that I told myself, nah, the small wins that I'm having, the small numbers that I'm getting, the small increases that I'm getting, it's actually it means so much in this world. It's not it may be for some people's metrics not in their life. They don't see success as it is, but for me that showed that I'm making an impact, and I need to celebrate more of those small wins. So, as I've gone through my journey, I've realized how important, celebrating small wins are. And right now, I still do that, especially when things get hard, especially when things get very discouraging. I try to look at my small wins. And I've learned that there are different things or different reasons why I do that. First is I become very grateful. I learned I tend to appreciate the things around me. I became more mindful of the things that I have, and I say thanks to them more often. Because when you start appreciating the small things in your career or in whatever you're trying to work on, every small thing in the other factors or the other areas of your life becomes a lot more, or it becomes bigger. You tend to appreciate it more. Every single thing that is happening in your life, the small things. And that's the first thing that it taught me. It taught me to be more grateful. The second thing is I just learned that success is exponential. It's not like a linear growth. I thought before, now okay, one step, one step, one step, one step, one step, and eventually you will get to the 100th step. But that will take a long and tedious process, and some people aren't up for that. But I learned that it's not that way. Success is actually exponential. It the earlier you stack up your small successes, the earlier you will, the faster you will get to that huge success. So that became my philosophy. Before I thought like, sige, just one plus one plus one plus one, but I learned that it's actually exponential. You just blew up. You just blow up when you get to this point that you have a lot of small wins. So I said to myself that if I have big goals, then I should be able to break them down into small challenges, small actions, and then small wins. And so that's what I did. So that's the second thing that I learned why I should celebrate small wins. And what else? Third, it just removed all the pressure, and I became more fulfilled. When I start to look at the small wins that I'm getting, it just removes this, as I said, the number game with everything that I'm doing, and I just became more fulfilled.
And
Like
focused on the
I
content that you make. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
I didn't give a damn again about numbers, because when you're in the game for too long, you get to be you tend to be lost with,
Mm-hmm.
I need to create good content, I need to create amazing content for my viewers. You get to be lost in that space. But celebrating small wins remind you that you just have to do it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And doing that makes me really fulfilled, and it removes all the pressure that I have inside my head and inside and over the things that I'm doing. So those are the three main things that I've learned when I started to celebrate my small wins.
It's beautiful though when you said that you shouldn't call them small wins. They're
Mhm.
wins nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's so true. And also the fact that you also said this was one of the things that caught my attention was we were never taught to celebrate wins. We were never taught. Society has always taught us that the bigger the better. reach that goal, and that's when we will acknowledge you, accept you, and understand you. And that is such a scary mindset, actually, to go through growing up in such a society that's very pressuring, competitive, everything like that. I felt you on that. I also just figured out celebrating the wins this year. Actually, like recently, it's really just recently when growth mindset came in, grit, and all those kinds of books that you have to read on and understand on growth mindset and understanding that everybody has their own time and pace. You always felt the pressure before. So with that, I really appreciate you sharing with us the ways that the things that you've learned from celebrating those wins. And that you've reminded us that it does have that impact to remind you of why you're doing it, right? It's really relieving. Plus it takes off the pressure of you reaching your goals, because we try to live a life that we think is linear. We always think that there's level 1, there's level 2, level 10. When you reach it, good job. No, it's very exponential, which is true. You kind of just reap what you sow. You really just keep on planting the seeds of anything that you want to work on, align your life to whatever you want to reach. And then one day you'll just be surprised that you're already at the top of your game and you're like, oh, I never even thought that I was there,
Yeah.
because you'd
Yeah. And
always
yeah,
want to develop. Go.
I just want to share, the thing about us not being taught how to celebrate small wins. That kind of mindset, when we don't celebrate small wins, it sets up for us looking at the world like it's black and white. Either you're a winner or a failure, either you're a winner or a loser. And that kind of approach is very harsh and very demeaning to our mental health. And it is very dangerous to the point that when we're speaking too harsh, when we're being too hard on ourselves, it actually sets up for a lot more anxiety and depression. That's why a lot of people are having depression. It's because they're just being too harsh on themselves. They are not treating themselves as a regular human being, which is someone who makes mistakes, someone who takes things slow, and someone has a different role and different pace that they're living in. And so I really think that, I just want to share it with you guys as well, is that when we celebrate small wins, we give ourselves compassion. We become kinder to ourselves. We apparently we talk to ourselves like we're our best friend, and we're going to support ourselves no matter what happens. And I think when a lot more people realize that, when we just become more self-compassionate, we can actually live happier and a more fulfilling life.
Exactly. That is true. It's not all about the success. I think what's important that people have to define success in their own terms.
Yeah.
Like what does it feel for you to be successful? What makes you happy? Why are you doing this? And not success does not mean just material wealth and all those, which is really, really true. That's looking at it when you told us about that. That could be one of the reasons. I also had that kind of thought where if people were kinder to themselves, I think they'll be kinder to the people around them. You'd
Yeah.
understand that people are also struggling. That's one of the things that I'm actually also relearning as I grow, giving my parents the slack whenever they fail on something emotionally. Because for me, our parents are not so emotional when it comes to a lot of things. They're not very vocal, they're not, but they provide you everything and they carry the weight of the world on their own shoulders and not tell you what's going on unless you ask. And when you ask, you're like, no, you're not supposed to hear this. This is adult talk. And you're
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
I'm an adult already too, so I understand. And it makes you realize when you also you have that spirit of, being grateful and trying to be mindful of the things that's been happening and kinder to yourself. You'll understand that also they are people who struggle too. Your parents also
Yeah.
don't have that thing of like, so whenever I don't really express my gratitude out loud with them because it's not our thing in the family, but I try in my own small ways. I thank them in my podcast, like I love my family, I always do that. And I give them credit where credit is due, coming towards it deep inside. So there's a lot of things that come along. And yeah, you were right. Celebrating small wins really just gives you a lot of perspective of what are the things that mean to you, and so that you don't get lost in your big goals. Having big goals, just dream big, dream the impossible, it's fine. But having those big goals doesn't mean that you already have to jump towards that. And the saying always goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. So you have to really go through a lot of the things. You have to really build yourself up from ground up, from zero. And people should be reminded that success is not linear. So that's one of the things that I'm really gonna, remember from that is true, because success is not linear, it's exponential. It's what you do that counts and that matters in that present moment. That would actually build up to whatever it is coming towards your way. And you'd be surprised with whatever you already did, whatever you built on that solid ground that you have on your whys and your vision. You'd be surprised that everything will come. Like, you are a testament to it, right? Can you tell us more about that? Like, from coming to that scratch of just doing your podcast for yourself, now you're part of Podcast Network Asia, right? And everything's just blew up for you. How did that came about? How did you feel that? How did you savor that moment? Because of course you're human. Tell us about the journey of getting that finally moment. How did that came to you?
Okay, I'm going to be honest with the whole podcast network thing. And what's really funny is a year ago they came to me when they were just starting. They wanted me to become part of their original roster, and I wasn't this huge. I wasn't getting all these listens per episode. And the funny thing about that is, a year after, I'm the one who messaged them. And I told them that, hey, does the offer still stand? Can I still join your team, right? Because I realized with the podcast, I wanted to take it to the next level. Even though it is growing, I realized that there are faster ways that I could grow. And that's one way of doing that is joining a podcast network. So I messaged them and they said, of course, we're still happy to have you. So they got me in. And it was a really fun experience, because not because I was signed, not because I joined PNA. It was because I'm part of this bigger community, a part of this bigger family, which I'm happy to represent. I've met a lot of amazing people on their podcast network Asia, and I wish I could have done it sooner. But when it comes to these small things, I let me just take you back when I was in fourth year high school. The first time I ever came up with the motivational speaker thought is when I saw Mr. Francis Kong speak at Letran. We were there for a field trip, and I saw Mr. Francis Kong, and he said, all the little decisions that you make right now will matter in the end. All the small things that you do right now will make sense in the future. So I remember that, but there was this very significant thing that Mr. Francis Kong left out. It's to celebrate the small wins. The small decisions that you make right now will help you get to your big goal, because it will give you small wins. That's what I learned in this process. That it's not necessarily me wanting to be a part of a podcast network. It's not me being the best podcaster in the Philippines. It's just, you need to focus on the small things and put your heart and soul into the small decisions that you make. And every time you get something back, you need to celebrate it. And so when the podcast network Asia came, the signing, and I was announced, it actually didn't feel like it was a pretty big deal in my own perspective, because I was so accustomed in celebrating small wins, and now everything that came into my life, it's just I'm not trying to
Yeah.
put it down or something. I just wanted to show people that I'm grateful for everything. A lot of people might be thinking now, wow, this guy's good, like congratulations, you did well. I would like to tell them, like, no, actually, I'm doing very well with before even signing with Podcast Network Asia. The fact that I am having these one-on-one conversation with people, the fact that I'm getting to receive message from people around the world saying that, hey, you saved me tonight. Hey, my depression, you helped me with my depression. Those messages mean a lot more to me than just being in a bigger success on what other people how other people look at it.
Yeah.
So that's a huge perspective, and that I learned when I started to celebrate small wins. It just gave me a whole new perspective that if you, of course, it's something to be celebrated, but if you become fixated on the large
Yeah.
success that you have, the small things, you're gonna overlook them.
You're
You're
gonna
gonna
take them
overlook
for
the small successes.
granted. Yeah.
Yeah, you are going to take them for granted. So that's what I am learning, and yeah, that's essentially what
No,
happened with all the podcast network.
but that was beautiful though. That was a beautiful message because you just completely shattered the idea of the small wins. The fact here is that you celebrate every win you get because you
Yes,
know it's giving back. You celebrating this is giving back to the people who support you.
yes,
It's not something that you brag about or no. It's something that you are grateful for, and
yes.
people will see that. So it's really humbling to also have it to you, diba? Like coming from you to say that I look at it as a small win because, whatever it is that I'm doing, I just want to be grateful for all of those things. And I can only imagine if people message you that you save them, that is such a high that you get to feel. You feel grateful, so grateful for it that you never even thought that you'd save someone on that level of a lot of things. So I think the lesson to be learned here is that your success isn't really just based on the numbers that you get. It's actually the success is on its own. The fact that you keep doing this, the fact that you still enjoy doing it, the fact that you still do it and you make content and you do it as to the best point and the best thing you can possibly do. That's such a win for itself. I think that's what people has to remember here. When you do something that is in line with your goal, when you have, for example, you were developing a habit of reading or
Yeah,
anything,
yeah,
you celebrate those because those bring you to wherever you want to be at a certain point.
yeah.
Again, you reap what you sow. Right? You keep sowing. You want to learn, listen, all that. It's really okay. I am really grateful for the conversations here.
Yeah,
But
no, I just wanna insert this when it comes to goals. A lot of people think goals are something to be reached, something to a place to be to where they want to go. Actually, goals are not that. When you get too stuck on goals, you eventually get lost because the future is uncertain. We don't have control over the future. But for me, goals are still very important because it sets you on the right direction, right? My goal before was to inspire 1 million people, motivate 1 million people. And I didn't, I didn't became, I focused on the numbers, the 1 million people. I have to motivate 1 million people, but it sets me in the right direction. So when all of these happen, and the thing is, my goal of inspiring 1 million people is not because I wanted to be that person who inspired 1 million people. It's because I wanted to be the person who gives value to a lot of people. And when you tie your goals into your identity, like of course the small goals is helpful because it helps you celebrate small wins, especially if you're not really mindful for the things that are happening. But if you get too stuck on that, you'll get lost. One thing that you can do to counter that is to tie your goals to your identity. So instead of trying to reach 1 million followers, why don't you try to be the person who inspires every single day. Because if you have that goal and you're living out every single day and doing that, then partly you are already successful, right? And then you can start just doing the thing that you love, doing the thing that you're good at without any pressure. And after a few months, you'll be surprised on how far you actually came without actually trying too hard. I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes sense, but
It
yeah,
it
that's my
it
point.
But it does. If you do you and you really just
Yeah.
find passion in what you do, people would gravitate towards that. People gravitate towards
Yeah.
genuine things, and they really resonate with you. And we talked about this also, how the
Yeah.
thing that keeps us similar in this world is that we all are different in so many
Mm-hmm.
ways. Right? Like all our experiences may be different, may be precise to the point, but the fact that this kind of experience is different from one another, that is also the thing that brings us together, that keeps us similar in all those ways.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have thought of this too, with you. It was really just so surreal actually. I remember the first time I was able to meet Alec in like a real. Yeah, I've never met Alec in video call. I've never even met him in person. But the first time I met him, I never knew that he was also the second guest for this Blogapalooza event that I was gonna go with. And then he came
Yeah.
along and I was like, oh my goodness, it's Alec. I was so excited. I was telling everybody in Blogafam, I was like, oh my goodness, it's Alec. I'm so excited. I've never, and then it was so surreal to have it there. And we had an interview with Blogapalooza. And then after that, we had a talk like after. It could have been a podcast episode actually, but we had a talk after at least 30
Yes.
minutes or so. And it was really, really good because we shared a lot of things in common, but we
Yeah.
were so different. The way that we
Yes. Yeah.
tell the things that we have were also so different. But that's what makes it refreshing to have him here, actually. That's one of the fun things. I remember having that feeling. I celebrated that a lot. That was a win for me. I was like, I am standing with giants today. Like that was amazing. There were like that. That was a back-to-back episode with podcasters. There was Kodazers and Eavesdrop and a lot after. So they were also PNA, mostly PNA, because
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I
Mama
saw
Ace is
that.
also PNA. Right, Mama Ace is also PNA, Ace Gapos. And really, really just cool. I was like, I'm standing with all them people. I was just so happy. Because I suffer, I think most of us suffer from imposter syndrome. I think it's really part of it. I suffer from that. If you guys don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's feeling like you're not enough, or actually having that a lot of self-doubt when it comes to when people say, "Oh, you're doing great," you don't really feel like it because you don't think that you're actually up to par with what you're putting out there. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also feel that a lot. Honestly, I feel that whenever like I go through, one of the things that I've also did this year was to just learn and learn. And I try to learn, do marketing, I join seminars. And with that, I even said, there's this one time they were saying to make lead magnets. And I was like, how am I going to make a lead magnet? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a whatever. Why would I make a PDF book and send it to someone on the email? And I'm like, okay, I'll try. I'll give it a shot because I don't really know if I'm really credible enough. And then one person told me, you don't really have to be credible. The fact that you feel or you know that you're a few steps ahead, why not share that kind of idea to other people? And I think that's what you're also doing, Alec. You are a lot of steps ahead of me in a lot of things too when you come to like the motivation stuff. When I listen to you, I feel like, okay, there are a lot to learn, and I'm very picky with a lot of that. Honestly, I'm a picky person when it comes to listening to people I need to listen to, because sometimes I feel like, I'm not sure if I should know all these things, and really picky because I really nitpick what benefits me most and what I need to learn. I'm that kind of a learner, and I enjoy and what I need for feel like I'm bad at this, I suck at this, and then I'll try to learn. And that's one of the things I've been doing. But with all those, I really just am happy having you in this episode because this talking about the wins that you had this year was a lot of wins for you, and these could be small or big on any scale. These are wins that you've celebrated along the way, and I am consistent and congratulate. I was like, oh my gosh, congratulations!
Yeah.
I was there, and I was like, I am really, really, I was excited for all of you and for that journey. And growing in this podcast community, Philippine Podcast Directory has been showing so much love. I cannot
Yes,
express how
yes.
much love they've shown to all podcasters. Like the award, the academy that they're doing. I really think it's gonna go far afterwards. Maybe they could be the first one to have those Academy Award things. It could be a thing and they could do it. I will definitely support them along the way, all those super super love for this podcast family. But before we go get deeper in our discussion towards why is it important to celebrate your wins, you've gotten a lot of this now, but talking about this more, we'll talk about Alex's journey to celebrating all those wins and that he has. Let's take a break.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Love, Growth, and Freedom. So, Alec, I will ask you the questions now. This is our interview proper. Would want to ask you all these questions. So,
Okay.
I want to ask you, what are you most thankful for this year? Of all your wins? What trumps it?
Easily every single growth that I had, the growth that I had for the podcast this year, that's the single thing that I'm most thankful for. I don't want to be the guy who's insensitive to say 2020 is a blessing, because apparently there's a lot of shit or stuff that's been going on with our lives in 2020. But 2020 has been really good to me. And I'm not saying that I wasn't affected. My mom lost her job. I got delayed in finishing my studies. There were a lot of setbacks. But 2020 has been the year where I learned to slow down, reflect, and just look at the things and give or pay attention to the things that actually matter. And I will be forever grateful for this year because I have learned so much. And aside from that, the podcast opened so many opportunities for me. And I'm really not trying to brag or anything, but for the people who want to start their own podcast, go start it now.
Exactly.
I am the living example that if you want to do something, if you have a dream, if you have an idea, if you have a message that you want to share, then go do it, because it will open doors to paths that you never imagined ever in your whole life. For the month of October, I spoke to 4 different schools: LaSalle, um, what else? A local college here. I'll be talking to CEU and some schools in Metro Manila as well, where I talk about the things that I am speaking in the podcast, which is really weird. For someone who is still studying in college, finishing my degree, they're asking me to speak. And the best thing about it is it's paid, and that's really something that I didn't expect this year. I always, before, minsan, sometimes, um, you know how your relatives and family get when it comes to these kinds of stuff, right? They'll tell you that's not viable, that's not stable, that won't get you any money, right? And for the longest time, I've endured those kind of remarks from a lot of people around me. And so when I got my first ever paycheck from my podcast, through my podcast, it just showed me that for all those years that I thought that it's not possible, for all the years that I had all the doubts and my fears, but I still went through it, I still came through it, it happened. And so if you are listening right now, I just want you to please understand that you don't need to have anything. You don't even need a degree. If you have a message and you really feel like you're good at it and it's something that you love, then go do it. Because that's what happened with me in the podcast. The podcast is started as a side hobby for me, as a journal, like Adrian's doing.
Yeah.
But it's really magical if you put in the time and the work and be patient with the process. and you have faith with something bigger that the plans for you is set, and you just need to play your role. You just need to play your part. Your life will just become a lot more easier, and that's what happened with me 2020. Even though this has been a very hard year, I've learned to just take it one day at a time and focus on my own stuff, and that eventually made me a lot more happier.
Exactly. Well, honestly, I would say to you that that this year was also a lot. Though it, if you took the time, that this gave you an opportunity to really just reflect on a lot of things. What really
Yes.
matters. It really just, it did a lot. It shed a light on how incompetent a lot of things are, how the system doesn't work for the world and for the people already. And if you talk about politics, if you talk all about those, you would see that the world is changing. And 2020 was a testimony to that. You've seen young kids making content in TikTok. You've seen all those people. And no matter how people, the traditional ones, who belittle us and creating content and doing that, that this is not going to lead anywhere, you see now how powerful it is when the old system was broken, when the old system was not given the power over us anymore. The old system proves that, pushes us to be actually commodities rather than people. Growing and looking at it, 2020 also gave me that. And honestly, I know I don't want to be insensitive towards it again too, but when you look at it, when you're not on the, what good comes of it is now that you're familiar and aware of how the world is broken and how you could help the other
Yeah.
people to come up. For the ones who have privilege to have those kind of growth, then you have now the power and the capacity, the capability and the eyes to see where things have been going wrong and to do your part in uplifting whatever it is to be uplifted. And in your own ways, if people were to do this, if people were able to take in that 2020 as a horrible year, it is a horrible year mentally. It brings all of that stress
Mhm. Yes.
and whatever that came with. But there were also growth that we were also supposed to be,
Exactly.
aware of and thankful for sometimes. Because that's one of the themes of this season. And I'm just glad to have this finale with Alec, because that was the theme of this season. To understand that there are pivotal moments in our lives that at first we wouldn't be thankful about. We wouldn't understand why it happened to us. But at the end of the day, when you look at it past a year or so, a month or so, you'd be thankful that it happened to you because it happened and it brought you good things. And it was essential for your growth at a certain point. It's just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that reason and all those things, why you're thankful for this 2020 and all that growth. But one of the other questions that I have here is, what were the challenges you encountered along the way? What were, like, you told us about your, relatives telling you that walang pera dyan, that what's not a stable source of income, all those. What were other challenges that you encountered in creating your content, your podcast, your episodes? And just keep going, you know?
I think one of the biggest challenges, and I've been in every single year I have this challenge as well. It's my own self doubt, my own mind telling me the reasons why not to. My mind trying to argue with my gut and what my intention. That's why, coming into 2021, my New Year's resolution is I will going to trust my gut more, because while I feel like I've grown so much, I've also missed out so many opportunities because I doubted myself. And for me, the biggest challenge is drowning out the demons inside your head and just understanding that there's the only failure you'll have in life is the chances that you don't take. You can never really lose when you try to take a risk. You just learn from that risk. And so I think battling with myself has been the biggest challenge. And for a lot of reasons, a lot of people forget that I'm still human, and I still get tired and I still get burned out. And so I actually went for a 3-day retreat last week, where I just stopped posting. I just put down my phone, went away to see to stay to my friend and just live there a normal life, a simple life, and it was really refreshing. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Also, for a lot of people, it's not knowing how to manage your energy levels. You're not knowing how to value your rest and your breaks and your leisure during these times, especially in the pandemic, because we don't have any boundaries or limits on our work and our careers, our school, and our personal life, right? Before we go to school or work, we'll study and work. We get home, it's time for our personal life. In this moment, we're mashed up together and we don't know which is for which, right? So I think balancing or finding the balance between doing the thing that you love and still having the time for rest was particularly hard for me. And overall, it affected my performance and it affected the quality of my content, which is why that is something that I will work towards 2021, not to take my rest. And I'll always try to believe and trust my gut and intuition.
Wow. Well, I agree with you. I think right now the exhaustion that you feel because everything's meshed together. There's no delineation where work ends, where whatever ends, your life
Yeah.
ends on that end. And you feel like everything is on a constant move. And whenever you stop, you feel like you're going to be left behind. And you can't
Yes.
really remove that. I feel that too. Like, honestly, cheers to that. But another question was, how do you deal with it? So you took your retreat. That was really nice of you. That retreat would have, that retreat would be nice to do so too. I would love that. Like, I tried a 1 week break, honestly, but I wasn't able to do a 1 week break. So like, it was like a what do you call that, drizzle of break. So that was 1 week without students because I am a teacher, right? So 1 week without students. So that was really helpful because having students to teach is very exhausting. I am always tired when I'm done with my class, always tired. But when that came, when I took the break, I just watched series, just tried to live and enjoy the mundane life of doing nothing. But essentially, I have other responsibilities that I have to deal with. So I'm like, okay, I did not really take a break. I just like slowed down. But how do you deal with those? How are you? If you like, what are your tips for people who doesn't have the privilege to have that 3 day retreat, that 1 week break? Because not a lot, right? A lot of
Yes,
people
yeah.
have to go through a lot of things before they get that, and some don't have the privilege to do so. So what are your tips, and how did you go through it yourself?
Um, it's about setting intentions, and it doesn't need to be 3 day break. It doesn't need to be a 1 week break. It can even go down to an hour. You know, I don't believe that people who are really busy don't have the time to take a break, because if we actually take account every single decision that we make for every single day, we spend so much time on social media that we don't need to spend. We we talk to people, we follow, we watch other people's stories, we get caught up in the media, the news, and all those stuff that's not really necessary for our growth. And so one way to deal with that is be intentional with your rest. A lot of people think now, after I do this job, I'll take a rest, right? But that's not really intentional. And one thing that I've learned, like I'm doing it for 2-3 months now, it's time blocking. Like checking out the next day. I'll plan it out tonight, and I'll plan everything out, even the resting, even the things that I'm not doing anything. I'm going to put that in my calendar, so my brain knows that my priority is resting, right? And I can do whatever I want. And that's just one way to just really be intentional. And once you do that, your body will become a lot more, you'll feel more productive with your day, because you're just doing things even when you're just Netflixing. You put that on your calendar. And so once I did that, I became less prone to burnouts. I became less prone to just, I need a break. It's because every single day I'm putting a break in my schedule. And So even if it's 1 hour, it makes a lot of difference. And so that's what I did, and hopefully a lot of people can try it as well.
That is so, we technically, it's so awesome though. Guys, I swear, Alec and I have a lot of things going. So I also did that. Like, that's so cool because I also did that. Actually, so when I took a time off the whole week, I knew that I shouldn't be doing anything in my rest time. So I'm like, really, I don't really mind. I will take responsibility for my laziness today. Like this is not this is not, what do you call that? This is not something that I can't control. I control this and I allow myself to do so because I need it. Those are the things that I also put in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just sorry for inserting.
No
you.
problem.
But I one thing that a lot of people don't get is rest is not supposed to be scrolling through TikTok and watching Netflix all day. You can do that, fine, it's fun. But that's not really the rest that I'm talking about. One way to think about it is, I'd like to put it as a leisure. A leisure is something that your body is resting, or your body is in a constant state, but your mind is still active. Jesus liked to sit down on the beach and just look at sunsets. That's one way you could do it, right? But you still have to go to the beach, and you still have to look on over the environment, right? Seneca loved to write letters, to write philosophy letters. Seneca is a Stoic philosopher, and he loved to write letters to his friends while he is on his break. There were some successful people that like to do gardening. There were some people who like to play chess. Einstein loved to play violin. And so music is one way to deal with that as well. Something that makes your mind, something that empties your mind but keeps your body moving in some way. You could do dancing, you could do singing, anything that actively engages your mind. That is the rest that I'm talking about. A lot of people feel burnout because they think that resting is, while I honestly believe that it all depends on you. Self-care, differs from a person to person.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of research that suggests that if you want to take a break, take it like something that you just love doing, and you won't feel bad afterwards, right?
Exactly.
You won't feel bad after you've done it. Because if you watch on Netflix for like 4 hours because it's your rest day, you'll still feel bad.
You'd feel
I don't know.
I would feel guilty.
I feel that way. And
Yeah.
so when I learned that, I tried to find different ways. And so writing's one way that really helped me. Reading books as well.
Yes.
Listening to podcasts, it
Yeah.
helped me a lot. And those are my resting periods, not just laying down trying to, okay, whatever happens not like that.
Yeah. But though we have, so I told you that was a demotivated phase. I was like, I'm just dead. But most of it, it's all right. I have different terms for that. My term is when I'm on a break from the season, from a podcast season, it's like, it's me getting inspiration. Means doing anything that makes me love and live life again, feel rejuvenated about everything. And that's true. When you take something that you do, I think what you have to do when you want to get out of that loop of feeling tired and demotivated is you do something you want to do. That's not work. That's not work.
Yes.
Like that doesn't mean that you have to, it's not something that you have to do because, it has to be a deadline. It has to be that and whatsoever. But it mostly is about doing something that you really love. What matters to you most? See, it's so funny. You also write, I also read. And one of the things that I'm trying to do now is guys, it's a habit building. If you want to do this, you have to make the conscious effort and decision to try and do it yourself. It's a conscious thing. It's not a one-time thing, an overnight thing that you did it today. You have to do, that's it. You do it if you want to do it. If you want to be doing it most of the time, you can write it down that you're proud of it, celebrate it on your notebook that you did it today. Those are the things that could help you develop that habit. But what I'm trying to do right now is I try to read the book, and instead of watching, because I enjoy also when I learn. So when I read a book, I learn. When I listen to podcasts, I enjoy it. So it's really a lot of things. And one thing that also saved me this year was roller skating. If you all seen my videos on Instagram, roller skating just
Yeah.
gave me a lot of emotions. I even had like this roller skating moment where it was a freestyle thing, and I was like, felt so good, and I finished it. I was so happy that I had that in my body, and I never knew it. I was not
Yeah.
thinking, just doing it, and it's a lot.
Yes, and that's the perfect example. Your body is actively engaging, and your mind is at the back. In the what do you call that? The shotgun in the car, and your body's just going with the rhythm. And you can stop roller skating if you wanted to. There's no break, or there's no bad thing that's gonna happen. There's no slack that's gonna happen if you cut it. But you just enjoy doing it and you love it. And
Yeah.
that's like the perfect example of rest. You need to have
Yeah.
those kinds of breast, break and rest. Yeah, my bad. But
All
yeah,
good.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Well, see, we've covered a lot of things today, and I'm so
Uh-huh.
grateful for that. We talked about demotivation and a whole cycle of a lot of things. And I hope a lot of you listeners enjoyed this, because I might have Alec again one day in our season. Next
Yes.
season, I'll talk about motivation, because he's the perfect guy for this one for sure. And with all this, these are amazing. I would love to thank you for all those. But can you give us an example of how you celebrate your wins? Like, what are the things that you do? Do you do a dance party? What are your celebratory things?
Ah,
Yeah.
when something good happens to me, there's two things that I can initially think of. First is I initially call my girlfriend, because
Aw.
when you have the success, it really means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. And it doesn't need to be your girlfriend. It can be your parent, it can be your friend, it can be your best friend, it can be your brothers or sisters. But we are human beings, and we feel that we need to connect to one another. And so having the small wins, you want to connect that with other people. It's not about bragging, but it just allows you to express your emotions and your happiness and your enthusiasm with your small wins. And so every single time that I receive an email that, hey, can you invite you as a speaker, I initially tell my girlfriend that, hey, I'm gonna speak like this, and she's very supportive, and I really appreciate her for that. And I think that's the first thing that I do to celebrate small wins, is to connect with another person and share my victories with her. I mean, yeah, I don't remember the quote specifically, but it kind of says that success doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is who you share your success with. So that's one thing to think about as well. And the second thing that I do is I buy myself one pint of ice cream. Yeah.
Oh, that's a fun way. So
Yeah.
fun.
Like I'm a sweet tooth. Like I love sweets. I love sugar. And
Same.
yeah.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
every single time that, okay, a deal is set, I'm gonna buy myself some ice cream, my pistachio, like it was 120 pesos. Buy that. I'm gonna just eat that, just looking into the horizon and eat that. And that's basically how I celebrate my small wins. Sometimes, I when there's a party or there's some friends that want to hang out, I spend time with them. But essentially, it's I need to celebrate. I need to hold on to that moment. And this is one thing that I would like to tell your listeners as well, is that we tend to stay in a position where we dwell on the bad things that happens to us, whether it's in the past,
Mm.
whether it's our anxieties, but we don't actually spend our energies and spend so much time celebrating our wins, which is really weird, because why are we doing it with the negative aspect and not doing it with the positive stuff, right? So I promise to myself that no matter how small it is, I will celebrate it and I will be happy with it, and I will hold on to that feeling in that moment, because I want to remember what that feels. Because as it gets hard, and it will get hard, I will be needing to recall that feeling. Oh, okay, you're having a hard time, Alec. You want to quit? Oh, you want to stop? Oh, don't you remember when you ate that one whole ice cream? Don't you remember the feeling when you shared your successes? Don't you want to feel that again? And so I slapped the shit out of me, the stuff out of me. I'm sorry. I slapped the
No
shit out of me,
worries.
and then
Yeah.
I just go on because I held on to that moment. I remembered how that moment went, and I want to repeat that every single day. And that's one way to also keep you motivated for the things that you are doing. And so hold on to the small wins.
That is so true. Like it is true that we rarely celebrate those things. Like we always wallow in the bad things. We always
Yeah.
feel so depleted, demotivated when we make a mistake, when
Mhm.
we all those. But we don't do that with wins. And that's such a good perspective to put out there. Is that you savor it. You savor it as much as you savor your loss. Your wins and your
Yes.
losses are the same thing. It happens to you and it teaches you something,
Yeah.
but you really have to savor it either way. Savor your wins. The wins that you have right now are things that you would actually be really, really grateful for. Honestly, I am so happy. Thank you, Alec, for this one. I am so grateful. It's so cool to see that you also have a sweet tooth. See, guys, I think Alec and I were probably brothers and whatever, brother from another,
Yeah.
because I have a sweet tooth
Yeah.
too. Honestly, I eat a lot. I celebrate my wins crazy. I celebrate mine with a dance party. Like
Mm-hmm.
I either you see if you've seen my morning coffees, those are one of my favorite. I try to make it a habit because I just want to share out like good vibes in the morning. So I really just dance it out. I don't care if I look crazy. Sometimes I look like shit when I'm in those videos because I just woke up and I'm like, I'm gonna make coffee. And it's a constant effort that I wake up at least 30 minutes to an hour before I have to work so that I have way time to motivate myself and
Mm-hmm.
all that. And also not using my phone the first time I
Mm-hmm.
wake up. It's really helpful, really helpful. But I sit down, and what I do is I sit down and practice gratitude. I thank the universe for whatever that is I have, or you thank God if you have any religion, whatever who you need to thank to, you think. And you think it out. You can visualize whatever you want. It's in the morning. That's your power. But it's just so cool to have you here, Alec, and everything just flowed. It was so awesome. I'm just grateful for you in this episode,
Yeah.
and yeah, go for it. Sorry.
No, I don't really feel like this is an interview. It's like I'm talking to a friend, and I'm really happy to be in this position right now. I'm honestly not sure if the things that I said made any sense, but I'm just happy to be in your show and to just talk with you guys and show my face again, once again, back in the podcast PH group. And yeah, so thank you so much for this opportunity.
No worries. It's more, I really just am grateful that how the community is so supportive of each other when we go through this. So before we end all things, Alec, I just want you to give us a little message to our listeners out here. What would you give them about their wins and what they should remember as they go through with their life? Take it away.
I think that the things I need to say, I already said it in the question and answer portion. But if there's something that I would like to add, because as we're approaching the end of 2020, and will this be released before the year ends?
It probably that's unsure, but it would be released. It's not probably before the year ends. You're a finale, so it's gonna be crossing the year. It's
Okay,
crossing
so
the
maybe
year.
January. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you're
Hey
listening to
guys.
this episode, so again, if you are listening to this episode coming into 2021, I just want you to remember that the small things matter. Whether it's a small action that you make, it will make sense in the future. The small wins is something to appreciate. Small things are things to be grateful for. And once we learn to see the world that there are so many small things and small wins happening around us, we'll feel super blessed. And when you are in the position of feeling blessed, there is no bad day or good day in your life. You're just blessed. So that's what I want to reiterate with you guys. And so if you guys have a message, because I know that if you're listening to this podcast, you are very well concerned with self growth and self improvement. And I just want to remind you that wherever you are in the process, there's always someone ahead of you. And when someone's ahead of you, you can learn from them. When you, and you are also, there are also people behind you, and they're just learning the steps, and you can teach them. You can show them how it's done. You can show value. You can guide them. You can teach them the things that you've learned throughout your journey, even though it's just a small journey. You are still a few steps ahead compared to other people. And once you understand that, hold on to your message and share it with people, because your message could actually save other people's lives. So do that, and always be thankful for the small things that are happening in your life. So yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. Because you all matter, people matter, and everything. Thank you so much, Alec. I just want to really send out love and light to you. This is such a wonderful episode. I honestly also didn't feel like it was such a. I was very inquisitive and curious about how you go through things, and it was so cool to realize that we had a lot of things in common. I just really am so happy about that. I'm like, oh, goodness, yay! And it's just really good to. It's really refreshing to hear that from people. Because you are at the top right now. You are really just climbing through a lot of things too, and a lot of people forget that you're also human, that you also go through a lot of things. And having you hearing you talk about this, it's very amazing. It gives us a point in that relief that yes, as humans, we are not supposed to be hard on ourselves. It's not really something that we should always be doing. And understanding that celebrating your wins and celebrating everything that you gain from this world is and will always make a difference in your life. So thank you for all this, Alec. And thank you, lovies, for taking the chance to listen to us on this episode of Love, Growth, and Freedom and joining us in this season finale. I am grateful for all of you who's listening. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and see us at Love, Growth, and Freedom on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. And before we end, I'd like to have Alec plug his show. Alec, tell us more about your show and where people can listen to you as well.
Yeah, you can listen to Smalltalk. It's available on Spotify and an Apple Podcast as well. Um, I am also. You can also find the videos that I put out. I put out daily motivational and inspirational videos on TikTok and on Instagram. Follow me at Smalltalk Podcast. And also, if you're listening to this, I am also finishing or creating a podcast masterclass where I teach people who want to create their podcast, who want to grow their podcast, and who want to monetize their podcast. I created a masterclass for you guys. So if you want to check that out, hopefully when you listen to this, it's out. So just follow me on Small Talk Podcast and send me a message and I'll talk to you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I might have to enroll in that podcast masterclass because
I
still want to learn.
You're already good.
No, I'd love. Actually, you know what? I've been looking for a mentor. Yes, I've always been very what do you call that? Very responsive to mentors. I'd love to have mentors in my life. I really like to learn from mentors. So if you're up, I could be your apprentice. I could be your padawan and a lot of things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'd sign up for that.
When people go sign up for the class, I'll be working with them hand in hand on how to grow and monetize their podcast. And especially if they're just starting their podcast, I think I'll be having like a Zoom meeting every single week for the students inside that class. I don't know the setup yet, but I'll follow it up with you guys so that you can be sure of that. So yeah, but make sure that you check that out.
Guys, it's very interesting. Alec is taking it to another level with the podcast masterclass. Thank you so much again, lovies, for listening. And I'll see you again on our next season. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or via RSS. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And if you want to know more, check out www.guerillapodcast.com.au or guerillapodcast.com.ph. A Guerilla Podcast Syndicate production.